Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Another Mother, a parenting and faith podcast by My Spring Harvest with me, Emma Borquay. In season 1, I got to chat to 9 incredible people about their experiences of parenting and life and faith and all that's in between, because life can be tough. It can throw us curveballs, especially when you've got kids. So it's nice to know that we're all in this together. We can learn from one another. We can get wisdom from each other. We can share in our journey. We can laugh along the way. So I am so excited to be back for season 2, where I'll be chatting to many more people about their experiences of parenting and faith. So today I am joined by the lovely Rosie.
Hello.
I feel like I'm on like a one of those like BBC shows where it's like move to camera 2, because I'm speaking to different cameras here if you're watching this podcast.
Camera 2 here we are. Thanks for having me.
Oh, you are so welcome. So let me just do a little bit of an intro to you, because I know that some people may not know you, although they're really missing out if they don't know you. So Rosie, me and Rosie are actually old colleagues. We both work for the same digital marketing agency, Neighbourhood. Shout out to Neighbourhood. So we have exchanged many Slack messages over our friendship, I would say. But Rosie is just one of those people that you instantly get on with. She's fun, she's honest, you're just bubbly, full of life, you've got a heart of gold, and you've got 2 gorgeous, wonderful children that have joined your family through adoption. So I'm really excited to speak to Rosie a bit more about that today. Is that a good enough intro for you, Rosie?
Wow, thank you very much. And Emma, it is a joy to be here with you. I've listened to series 1. I loved series 1. So it's so fun to be here for series 2. Thanks for having me.
So Rosie, if you don't mind, can we go all the way back to the beginning of the life of Rosie? So all the way back to Essex, really, and just tell us a bit about what life was like for you growing up. What was family life like for you?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a joy to talk about, really, because I had such a lovely childhood with I grew up with mum and dad and a sister, and we had lovely childhood. It was just really fun to grow up with my sister. Very different to me, but just we had a lot of fun together, and we were part of a massive family. So my mum is the youngest of 7, and my dad has got 3 brothers, so he's one of 4. So we've got this wildly giant family. I mean, they've all had kids and had kids and had kids. So there was a count a couple of years ago that we did, and it was like over 100 cousins at this point. And you just think, like, I know, some of them I don't actually know. Many of them I know really well, but some of them are overseas and whatnot. But yeah, we've got a lot of cousins. So grew up in a big family. My family also have adoption and fostering, like within my wider family as well. So I've grown up around cousins who have been adopted formally, fostered formally, but then also kind of informal adoption as well, where birth parents maybe weren't able to look after someone, so then kind of another family member stepped in to kind of care for that person. So we've had all sorts of different sorts of care situations within my wider family. So I've grown up in a space where we really celebrate that, and it seemed to be such a joy to have family in a way that isn't what you'd necessarily imagine family to be, of kind of birth kids with kind of, 2 birth kids and set up in this way. So yeah, we had lots of fun growing up with so many cousins running wild for our poor parents, but
That's incredible. Do you know what? I don't know if I've ever met someone with over 100 cousins. That's a lot of cousins.
Here I am. Yeah, 100 cousins.
Yeah.
They are, I should qualify. Some of them are second cousins, so they're not all first cousins. I should qualify that.
No, that's fine. Also, I get a bit confused with what constitutes a second cousin. Is it your cousin's child or your parents' cousin?
Now that's a question. I always thought it was your cousin's child.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Is it not? But then what's a half cousin?
Oh, a half cousin. I don't know. It's an absolute mystery. Do you feel like the fact that you grew up with that, and you grew up probably seeing quite a positive as well example of how fostering an adoption can really like bring so much joy to a family, and so much diversity to a family, and just like you said, diversity of thought and experience and all that kind of stuff, and how you all grew up together and had such great experience. Do you feel like that contributed to then your decision to want to adopt when you were an adult?
I think so. Yeah, I think it really did, because I never saw adoption as being different or particularly unusual, to be honest with you. So I never really saw it as something that you would consider kind of different to any other route to family.
Yeah.
And for me and my husband as well, when we got married and started thinking about family, I always knew I wanted to adopt. I always knew my family would look different to birth kids. It's really hard to explain, because as a child, it's difficult to quantify what that means or what
Yeah.
that looks like. But I always had a sense that my family would look different, potentially because my wider family is like so beautifully diverse as well. I just imagined that would be what my family looks like. So yes, we went into marriage, my husband and I, and when we decided to start talking about kids, for me it was always the priority would be, I would love to adopt. And my husband was really similar in that, and we were on the same page from the beginning, which really helped. So it wasn't like I was trying to convince him or he was trying to convince me. We both just were like, yeah, let's adopt, as the first choice rather than any other route to family. So yeah, I think growing up in a big family with lots of different routes to family inside that wider family. I think that really helped um, grow my love and desire to have family in this way.
That's so
Yeah.
incredible. And even the fact that you and your husband were so kind of on the same page about that from early on, to the point that you had decided, yeah, we're not going to try for biological children. We know that we want to adopt, so this is what we're going to do. But how did you find that? Because I think sometimes, I guess, like the societal norms or like the societal expectation is that, oh yeah, of course you would also have biological, or at least you would try, or whatever those kind of norms are. And then being so kind of set from such a young age of like, no, actually I'm going to adopt. Speaking to your husband, he's also like, yep, let's do this. Were there ever moments of doubt where you thought, oh, actually no, like, are we meant to like do biological first? Like, what, I don't know, was that ever a thought or a question for you?
I think it's a really good question, and it's something that I have wondered a lot. And I I have never had personally. I've never had the desire to like to be pregnant. And I know that lots of women, that is their calling, and it's a beautiful calling. And we had some friends over at the weekend, and she's just given birth, and her explaining her story about the pregnancy and then into birth as well. I mean, I'm like, go on, birth mums, you're amazing. I just like, maybe I'm too scared, but I just could not imagine putting my body through that. But for me, it was always what we wanted to do. But we definitely have been questioned a lot on why. And you're so young. Are you sure you're not going to change your mind about having birth kids in 10 years' time? Are you sure you're not going to want to try and have birth kids? And that's come from kind of all different routes. So it's come from our like inner circle, but also social services. So when we first started the process with adoption, social services were first of all quite I'm not sure if they were unsure what to do with us, because they are having more and more young families that are coming to adoption as their first choice. But we were young, so I was 26 when we started the adoption process. We'd never had birth kids, and we hadn't really even considered it. So we don't even know if we can have birth kids. And so the social workers were telling us, if you want to have birth kids, it might be advisable to try first and have birth kids, and then welcome the children with care experience into your family after you've got that set up. So it's a little bit less. You're basically welcoming children into a setup that's already established, rather than like establishing a new setup once the children are in your placement. So we've got that advice, and we thought, we don't want to do that. We
Yeah.
don't want to. Um, so we never questioned it ourselves, I don't think, because we were always so firm that we knew that adoption was the route for us. And I think it is a God-given thing for us. Like, I really do think that this is a thing that God has put on our hearts. And you can over spiritualize everything, can't you? Because you can make just good decisions. And you can also make decisions that are based through what God has put into your heart. And I think that it's a bit of both for us, in that we're like, we want to do this, therefore we will. But also we do think it's something that God has put within us to adopt. So yeah.
When you're in that kind of position where you've got friends and family that love you to pieces, and that's probably part of the reason why they put those kind of troubleshooting questions to you of like, are you sure? Like, think about, yeah, like what you said, when they're like, oh, what if you change your mind or whatever, like all of those things to consider. How, like, I don't know, how did you stay the path? Was it genuinely just a real thing of like, God, I need you to continually give me the courage to like communicate to my friends and family that this is what we're doing, to communicate strongly to social workers? And I guess, yeah, with social workers, you're kind of constantly feeling like you've got to prove yourself almost. So you don't want them to write you off by being too strong. But yeah, I don't know. How did you navigate that kind of like staying firm despite what other people thought you were what other people thought you should do?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's something that I didn't really realize that would be so important and that we would need to do so much. I think our friends and family, on the whole, there was a lot of support. There was a lot of support, but there was a lot of, I think, fear of the unknown. Because it's not, like you say, the expected route traditionally. I mean, there's more and more young families that are choosing to adopt and foster and offer supported lodging. So it's really exciting to see that, but it's not the expected route for many. So I think there's a lot of unknowns and questions and curiosity around that. So for us, it was about educating ourselves at the same time that we were kind of taking our family and friends along the journey with us at the same time, and like learning together what this could look like for us and for kind of our wider context as well. So we didn't really realize that we had to be so firm until we were in it. And we were like, oh my goodness, yeah, this is a decision we have to make all the time to decide that we're still going to do this. And any route to motherhood is hard, right? It's not like anyone has got an easy route of it.
Yeah.
But I think because fostering and adoption and supported lodgings is a little bit more unknown in terms of for others what that looks like generally, because there's so much that it could look like. I think people wanted to really protect us and help us to have as smooth a time of it as we could. And social workers as well. We found that, I know that others might who've been along the process or that have been in touch with social workers, you do feel like you have to prove yourself. And we were told,
Yeah.
buy the good biscuits for the social workers. Make sure you've always got biscuits. Make sure you've got sweeteners, not just sugar, because a lot of them have sweeteners, not sugar in their tea. They won't lie to you. You know, all this stuff. And so you're like, yeah, we've got to make sure that we please the social workers. But they have a lot of control over whether this is going to be the right route for you or not. And they rightly so, because they're well trained and they've got a lot of experience, more than we would have, with kind of knowing kind of what this could look like for our family. So you do have to go on a journey with the social workers, and it's something that we had like both really good experiences with and real frustrations with as well, with them feeling like they weren't getting us.
Yeah.
And a lot of that is to do with like the faith aspect as well, because we were coming to adoption through the lens of faith, whereas some don't. So there's an element there where we think that we would be great parents because we've got the greatest father. So we think that that would be a great route to bringing up kids in this setting. But often that's a bit, we felt that was difficult decisions and difficult conversations sometimes with social workers who may not have the same perspective that we do about
Yeah.
what a good parent would look like.
Yeah. And I guess you can't really say to your social worker, like, I want to adopt because God told me to.
Yeah.
Like, you could, but I don't know how well that would go.
I think pretty terribly. Yeah, and that there's a lot of they're very sympathetic to faith and people of
Yeah.
faith, and that was our experience. We had kind of both sides of it. So we went through an adoption agency to do all of our training, which is when they kind of like certify you to be adopters. You have to do kind of a set amount of training. So we did all of that through an agency who are very sympathetic to people who have faith. So we felt like we had our hand held a little bit in that sense. And then when we got into the local authority, when we were doing family finding, that's when it was really different in terms of, we're not really interested in your motivations to adopt. We just want to know that you're going to be good, safe parents.
Hello, everyone. I'm just interrupting this episode very quickly to let you know that bookings for Spring Harvest 2025 are now open. And I can also let you know the theme for the year. It's going to be all about no greater story, following the book of Isaiah. So it's going to be a brilliant week of Bible teaching, worship, all age things for your family, loads of on-site activities, children's groups, youth ministry. It's all there. So head over to springharvest.org to find out a bit more about the event and decide if you want to book on with your family. There's 2 sites, Skegness or Minehead at Butlins. So it's just going to be fun galore. Okay, so head over to springharvest.org and you can check out all the options. Wow, it's interesting, isn't it? Because I think, especially when you think about becoming first-time parents, like for you and your husband, I guess there's a lot of connotations with that in the societal norms of like, how exciting, you're starting your family, let's have a baby shower, let's decorate the nursery, like all the little things where it's like, I don't know, just things that are seen as very celebratory because it's so exciting, like starting a family. But then I guess then being met with the official process that actually is very challenging. And so it becomes quite I don't want to say a challenging start to starting your family, but you don't get to experience it in the same way as you do with all the celebratory, yay, 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 baby shower here, baby shower there. Yeah. It's like paperwork here, paperwork there, and like interview here, interview there. And it's a lot, isn't it? So I think and like you said, rightly so, it has to be like that because it's for the children's best interest and it's for the protection of all the children who are in care and being placed with families and stuff. That's such a delicate, sensitive process. But then I guess talking from a faith angle, how did you kind of manage that feeling of, right, I've got to be really realistic about what this process is, and you're constantly being told almost to expect the worst, or here's worst case scenario, be prepared kind of thing. But then holding in the other hand your faith that actually no, like we expect the best, like because God is a good father to us and he gives good gifts and we believe this is the right thing to do. So having that really hopeful side versus the reality, was that a challenge? Like how did that feel for you?
It was a massive challenge. And I think that the one of the hardest things for us was knowing that we'd chosen our children, but they hadn't chosen us. We had chosen them. And in starting a family, this was like the most exciting thing in our lives that we were ever going to do. And yet for these kids that we've chosen, they've got no say in it. And they're being like ripped out of a foster care placement where they are relatively settled. And because we know that the long-term gain for them is going to be so worth it. But in the short term, that is so traumatic for them. So you're like taking them out of their situation and putting them into a new one. We're your mummy and daddy, and we're going to be your forever mummy and daddy. And they've got no choice in it, and they've got no say in it. They've got no autonomy there. It's just, so for us, it's like the most exciting thing in the world. And yet for these kids, these poor kids, it's a pretty brutal situation to go through, considering everything else in their short lives that they've experienced as well. Like it's a pretty brutal situation for them. So we had that kind of in the back of our minds all of the time as well, in knowing that we wanted to be excited because we know the long-term gain, but also we want to be realistic and understand the trauma that causes, another transition of the trauma that causes. So we had that in the back of our minds the whole time. And we're very practical people, my husband and I. We're very kind of one foot in front of the other. And I think that really helped. But in terms of our approach to processing all the paperwork and the process, we did just try and look at every decision through faith and love. That was like our framework in all of the paperwork we had to fill in, which is a lot. They look through your bank accounts, they look through this, they look through that. So there's a lot, they kind of like scrutinize and rip apart every part of your life. And not rip apart, they analyze every part of your life. Which they have to do because they have to know that you're going to be safe and good parents. But we found that really frustrating at times. So we knew that we had to make every decision through faith and with love, no matter how frustrated we were, no matter how much we disagreed with some of the feedback's always good, isn't it? But some of the feedback we thought maybe wasn't right for our situation, or the social services, just even the process at some points we felt really frustrated and held back by it. And some of the social workers themselves, they're so stretched, and yet we disagreed with some of the stuff that, so we just, through everything, even though there were complications and there were challenges, we tried to make every decision through faith and with love, to everybody that we met, not just the people that were on our side, but kind of everyone throughout the process. And that really, really helped.
Yeah. Because how you said that you first, or was it that you first put in your application? Is that what it's called? Was it 26? You were 26 at the time.
Yeah.
And then
26.
how long was it from that point until your children joined you in your home?
So I was 26 when I started, and the process for us took 2.5 years. So from the very beginning to the very end, where our kids were placed in our house with us and we became a family, that was 2.5 years. There was a lot of training, and then family finding for us took a little while. Both parties, like, we wanted to make sure that it was definitely the right decision. We saw lots of profiles, and social services obviously want to make sure that's like the most important thing to get right, is the match. So 2.5 years total. It's a long time, isn't it?
It's a pretty long time, yeah.
Yeah.
But then at the same time, it is a long time, but in the grand scheme of life, it's not at all, is it? Like, you probably look back on that time now and you're like, like, I don't know, you probably maybe think, oh my gosh, that was long. But I'm sure it doesn't feel as long on reflection.
Yeah.
Or maybe it does.
Maybe it will feel less long in 3 years' time.
Yeah. Do you think there are any parts along that journey of that 2.5 years that you kind of wish you were more prepared for? Or you can never be prepared enough, but were there things that maybe you wish someone had told you was going to happen, or that you just felt more ready for?
Yeah, I think we knew people that had adopted before us, in terms of literally just before us, like a year before, and they were really helpful at going through all the process with us and saying, this is what happens at this stage, this is what happens at this stage. But with everybody in every situation, it's different. So for us, adopting and the process for us, it's very different to somebody else, because we come to parenthood with our own stuff that we've lived with, that then needs to be kind of worked through and talked about in our setting, and so would somebody else. So everybody's lived experience is different in that way, which means that the process is always different. But the thing that I was not ready for was the matching process. My goodness, that was pretty heartbreaking, I've got to be honest with you, because you see all of these children, you see photos of children, you see their names, you have a little glimpse into their life, not much information, but at the beginning, you have a little glimpse into their life. And the volume of children is like, it's completely heartbreaking. And I wasn't ready for that at all. In fact, I had to take some time away from it because it was becoming too much for me to see all of these faces and little children who needed a home, and older children as well. It wasn't just younger ones. So I found that emotionally really tough. So I had to kind of take some time out from that, and my husband would kind of be clocking and seeing if there was anything that felt right. But that process for me was like emotionally pretty rough. And they do have things in place where you don't have to go through that route. There are other routes to matching, but we thought we'd be all right. And I thought I'd be all right. I was like, yeah, that's fine. Yeah, we'll do this. That makes most sense. And it's lovely to get a bit of a sense of, and then you see the pictures and you read their names and you hear a glimpse of their stories and you think, oh my goodness, I want to take all of them. So I found that really hard. I've got to be honest.
Do you know why you were matched with your children in the end? Because they're siblings as well, aren't they?
Yeah. So they're birth siblings. I've got a little boy and a little girl, and we actually chose them. So my husband and I both saw their profiles, And I kind of clocked them. I was like, "Huh." And Dave clocked them, and he brought the laptop through to the room that I was working in. I was like, "Have you seen?" And so we saw their profile. We're like, "Wow, that's so interesting." And we were like fascinated by. We were really keen to adopt siblings. So we knew that was part of our criteria was two. At one point, we thought three, but two. Social services were very, very generous and kind with us in saying, "We think you can take two." And we're like, they know better than we do. Yes, they were right. And we just fell in love with them. I've got to be honest. Like, we saw their picture, we saw their names, and saw the little glimpse of them, and just like completely fell in love. Couldn't stop thinking about them. Wouldn't stop thinking about them, even if you tried. Lying in bed trying to go to sleep, and was just thinking about these kids. And so we put in a application to kind of find out more. So it's like a bit of a family finding situation. That's when you get put in touch with their social worker, who kind of scopes out whether they think that you might be an appropriate match for them as well. And it was a bit of a longer process. Our boy had quite a few transitions, so he hadn't always lived with his little sister. He'd lived with different siblings at different times in life, so he'd had a number of moves before he came to us in his short life. So they just wanted to make sure that it was definitely the right move for him, but also for his little sister. So yeah, after a long time, we figured that it was the right match, and we actually met them. It was just before Christmas, and we'd met them for the first time. So we went to meet them before we'd formally made the decision. Yes, just to I can't remember what they call it, basically like a chemistry test, just to see like if it's a bit of a chemistry test. And we went to meet them just before Christmas, and just was like, didn't even know you could fall in love anymore, but we'd fell in love even more. And it just felt really natural from the beginning, like hard. But yeah, our little girl was just like staring at us like, who is this? She was just staring. I think she was only 2. She was one and a half at that point. So she was very young. Our boy was 4 when he came to us, but she was very young, but like so perceptive. And because of the experience they've had of like multiple grown-ups looking after them in a short time, they kind of know what's going on. But yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. And you mentioned that you said how your boy had lived with some of his other siblings at different points.
Yeah.
I know that you've mentioned that you do actually keep in touch with some of their other siblings. How do you do that? Like, what's that like?
Yeah, it's so fun. So we really had to fight for it, actually, because the social workers initially advised us not to be in touch with any birth siblings. It's a bit like it's a bit neater for everybody if it's like adoption and that's it. But we felt really sad about that we would be taking our children away from relationships that they had with their birth siblings. So we asked, could we do this? And then the social services, the social workers were actually really keen in the end, so they allowed it to happen. So we see 6 of them. They're all older, and it's always like so loud and so fun. Honestly, it's like it's very fun and very loud. And we see them once a month-ish. So we go to like a space like a park or a soft play or bowling, and we go and hang out for the afternoon. And then we keep in touch with like video calls and stuff in between then. But it is such a joy to be able to adopt our beautiful kids, but then also to like welcome this whole like wider family into your family. And for us, that is like one of the best bits. It's just being able to have our kids with us, but then also with the knowledge of their family. And now our family is so much wider than it was before, because we've got all of these beautiful kids that we're doing life with. So
Wow, that is so incredible. I love that. Like you said, when you see their siblings and you get to hang out with them, like it's such a joy to, I guess, have even more people as a part of your extended family, and it will as your family really. And you also mentioned how during the matching process, it can be so heartbreaking to just realize and understand and really see, like, for names and faces, the volume of children that are out there that do actually need a home, that they do need do need a placement or need foster care or need adoption and long-term families. And I guess that's one of the hard things about embarking on this process, is that you have to accept that that is going to be something that you're going to understand on a much deeper level than what really anyone who's not been through that process would understand. Like, I can only imagine what it might be like to see that, but really seeing it and probably still remembering those faces and still remembering those names, it's a lot, isn't it? And I guess it's so hard because we know that there are flaws in everything, and there are flaws in the care system. And as much as you would want to be able to say, do you know what, I'll have an open home and I'll have 100 kids, even that's not going to be enough. Like, you need a house for more than 100. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's never going to really feel enough. So I don't know, how did you kind of face those feelings of like, I'm doing as much as I can, but what I'm doing doesn't feel enough?
That is such a good question, and it's something
it's
that
heavy.
it's a good question. It's something that I like will often wrestle with in my own day-to-day life, in thinking I've not even done enough. I've not even scratched the surface. What more could I do? But I know that my commitment is to my 2 kids, and that is the decision that I've made and that we've made, my husband and I, to have a family and to welcome these kids into our family, is the decision to commit to them for the rest of their life, and for them to grow into committing to us. If they, they might choose something else later down the line, but that's the commitment that we've made. For us, it feels like the first step, and acknowledging that we have not got control or power to solve this problem on our own, but that we can advocate to help other people join us and being passionate about this. It doesn't mean that everyone has to adopt. It doesn't mean everyone has to foster, because it's not right for everybody. It's not.
Yeah.
And there are certain families or people who would want to adopt, but they don't have the resources to, or the space to, or they just don't want to. And that is like totally fine. But part of what I'm passionate about is like advocating for the process of caring for children with care experience, so that other people can either like pray or get alongside families in that way, to help be a part of the solution as well. So even if fostering and adoption isn't right for everybody has something that they can do to be a part of the solution and to like help the solution, I think. So that's what I love doing.
Absolutely. And I think, like as you were just saying, it just made me think there's so many issues in our world and in our daily lives and things where we constantly feel like we're not doing enough, we could be doing more. And I think, I don't know if it's actually, maybe I should say that, I was going to say, is it like quite a womanly trait? But maybe not, just a human trait. But to often feel that kind of sense of guilt almost, that can sometimes, if you allow it to, that guilt could even rob you from making the choice. To like, if you stepped away from, for example, the match process where it was really challenging, you were seeing so many children, it was just so emotional, you could have stepped away at that point and you could have said, do you know what? This is too much. I can't do it. And because you know that you can't do everything, but actually to get back up again and to stick through it with the process and be like, no, do you know what? I really believe that God has called me to do this. I believe that we are going to have a family and we're going to welcome these children in, and whoever's the right child for us, that God will bring that child to you, or those 2 children or 3 children, however many you end up having. But that just, that kind of getting back up and sticking with the process despite the guilt or the overwhelm of how big the issue is. And I think that applies to so many situations in life, not just adoption and fostering, but I think we can take on a lot, but it's still looking for the action in that.
Absolutely. And everything can be paralyzing in that sense, right? So all of these massive issues in the world, and that we see, that we want to see justice in, can be so paralyzing because it's so big that nothing that we can do will solve it, is what it feels like. But we can make small changes that do make a real massive difference. And that's how we saw the process we learned to see the process was small actions make a big difference. Even if you feel like you're paralyzed to make any difference in the rest of the situation, you can make changes in one area that make a real difference.
Yeah.
And everyone can do that.
That's incredible. I feel like this conversation is one that so needs to be had, because I think we do sometimes talk about adoption and fostering, especially in churches. But I think we don't often get to hear the kind of reality of the process and the both sides of it, like the heartbreakingness of it and the challenges of it, but also the incredible beauty of it. And like, I just love how passionate you are about your kids, like any mother is. Like you love your kids to pieces, and they bring so much joy to your life, and exhausting all at the same time. But I think it's so beautiful to hear kind of your story and your truth in this whole journey and the impact that you've made, which has been brilliant. Do you think, is there anything that if someone was listening and perhaps this has been something that's been on their heart, maybe it's been a question mark, like, oh, is this something that I want to do? Like, is this the option for our family? Is this what we're going to do? What kind of encouragement would you want to give anyone considering fostering or adoption?
I would say, if you are considering fostering or adoption or offering supported lodgings, go in with your full heart and be ready for your heart to be fully broken, and then mended again, because it is the most humbling experience that I've ever been on. And I have learned so much about myself alongside my husband, and I've learned so much about different approaches to life, and that is something that I will never take for granted. And also something about the birth families. And I was talking to a friend who's also an adopter recently, and we were saying about how it can be, and you are really cross about what your children have been through in a previous life. You do get really cross about that, because you never want them to experience anything other than pure joy and comfort and safety. So you do get really cross with that. But always something that I've learned and it's a long way around for me to come here, but that we need to pray for the birth families just as much as we need to pray for our kids, because it's not their fault that this is the experience that they have found themselves in, because most likely they have not been parented well themselves. And so how can they model good parenting to their own kids if they're not being shown how to be a good parent themselves? So the humbling experience of being able to be really cross and sad about what your kids have been through, and yet pray for real healing and restoration for the birth families as well, because that's where we need to see change as well, is with full healing with the families, the birth families that these children have come from. So there's a lot in that, and it makes your heart really hurt, but also I feel like it's so important to remember about praying for the birth families, no matter how hard that is. And also remember good biscuits for the social workers, because if you get good biscuits in, they've got a smile on their face and they're happy. We spent a fortune in biscuits, honestly.
What are the good bits? What would you say your best biscuit is?
Do you know the ones that are like, they come in a packet that is not, it's like, they're like really fat.
The chocolatey rounds. Oh, okay. No, I don't know those ones.
I mean, I'll buy you one next time I see you. They are delicious, but I mean, they do get scoffed down very quickly. So we kind of had a stack in the cupboard of these biscuits, just knowing that the social workers will come and get biscuits.
Oh, I love that. Oh, well, thank you so much, Rosie, for letting us in a bit on your life and your family, and just, sharing so honestly with us. I really appreciate it. And I do hope that anyone who's listening to this, if you are thinking more about this or you've got questions, we'll hopefully link to some helpful resources for you somewhere on some sort of link. We'll get you some links, don't worry, guys. But yeah, honestly, I really appreciate your time. So thank you, Rosie. And we'll see you soon.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I'll send you a Slack message, shall I?
Yeah, please do. Slack me now. Bye. Thank you so much for listening to Another Mother. Don't forget to subscribe for future episodes, and please do help us spread the word about this podcast. You can share it with your friends, with other parents that you know, other mums, grandparents, or just anyone that you think might enjoy these episodes.